how does reputation play a role here? Like reputation for AI agents powered by digital identity. I think that could be interesting to talk about. So I will start with you, Rish, this time.
As I was saying just now, reputation will matter going forward. Like what kind of AI agent you are consuming the data from, whether this data is coming from a credible source or not, and what has been this AI agent, or it could be in not even AI agent, it could be from any kind of source, any kind of news, media, or a track where you want to basically, if you want to track about a company, how this company has been doing the work in the past based on the reputation. Or for instance, suppose if you have a merchant who has been producing some stuff, where is this product getting sourced from? Whether this is, or diamonds for that case, whether this diamond is a blood diamond or not, whether some people were abused to get extracted in the extraction of these diamonds and stuff like that. So basically the entire supply chain can have a reputation system attached to it. If you're conscious, like whatever you are wearing, someone is not losing something in behind just to consume that. Think from a different, so many aspects can be attached to it in terms of how you can basically track the supply chain, track the content what you are consuming, what next? Like maybe the news kind of stuff. It's very vast, I would say.
Perfect, perfect. I think that covers a lot. That's a good broad ground that you covered. And the same question to you, Ravi, as well. Like not more like a question, but more like request to comment on reputation for AI agents powered by digital identity. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So I think taking a step back, maybe, just to be on the common ground of what we all understand from reputation, right? So if I draw an analogy in today's world, how a human being is getting reputation, right? So what is an education qualification? What is my experience? What is, let's say, my financial net worth and things like that, right? That establishes a reputation for an individual. And we get that reputation by various sources. We call them as issuers, right? They issue me, like, what is my college degree issued by my college? I got, let's say, my employer certifying me about my skills and so on. That builds up a reputation. Now, in the digital world, when we are talking about a software getting a reputation, what does that look like? And this is where, we have been trying to brainstorm and see a reputation for an agent, how would that differ from what we call as a reputation for human? So to me, what it looked like is that when there is a developer who has built this particular agent, how he has built that agent, what the type of model, what kind of fine tuning, what kind of RAG has been utilized in order to train that agent, or rather, build that agent. That could be one parameter building up a reputation for an agent. Similarly, who is the organization backing up that agent? That adds up another layer of reputation. How do we have the legal status being established for an agent? Are there credentials being issued to this agent in terms of being fair, non-discriminatives, and so on? I think collectively, all this credential would help in terms of creating something we call as an agent reputation. Going a step beyond, what I feel is this reputation should not only be indicating the work done by an agent in a positive way, right? So we give a rating, let's say when we look out for a restaurant or again for a DApp store example, and it goes in a positive sense, let's say 2, 3, 4, 4.5, whatever it is. But then there has to be also a negative reputation, where in case if the inferences being generated by an agent are not matching or there are anomalies that have been identified, how can we also do a negative reputation? And that eventually should offset what is the total score coming out. Over a period of time, we would all see that there are going to be several agents and there are going to be several AI agent marketplaces. It's going to be difficult for us to understand which is the agent that a user should go and take, let's say, a crypto advice or health advice or education advice. And this is where this reputation is going to play a very significant role for us to be ensuring that we are talking to a right agent, and those right agent would earn premium if they are reputed. So it's going to be a very important aspect in terms of building the overall agentic economy.
Perfect. I think I'll just add one thing to that, and just to make it a little bit more connected to what you both said. Essentially, it's like if we have a reputation attached to an identity that can be manipulated, that reputation can be manipulated as well. So as long as we have anchored digital identities, immutable digital identities on blockchains, those reputations become even more reliable.
Yeah, I think glad that you maintain a word immutable there, because what otherwise would happen is that I have a reputation, but if there is a way where I can restart, I can reset my reputation, is all the negative impressions that are there are gone, right? So this is where I believe there is again a notion, something which we call as a identity bond, or rather unique identity bond, where you might have a reputation for outspoken in political context, and that cannot be reset. So that you have a reputation, but that is verticalized in a way that you have certain reputation for spoiling up, or let's say doing something incredibly wrong in a particular segment, and that is something that cannot be reset. Otherwise, everybody can restart, and I can create another email ID and get a fresh digital identity in a space, and then I can restart everything doing again, right? How can we avoid that? But at the same time, that is only in one vertical. That should not impact me, let's say tomorrow, to get an admission of my kid in a school, because there is something that I have said incorrectly in a political instance, right? So how can we have that context-based unique identifier, and that can be one of my subset compared to my parent identity? I think this is an area that we are exploring.
Perfect, perfect. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Let me pick it up. So yeah, let's say, interesting topic. How do you prevent fake identities from AI agents? So let's start with you, Ravi.
Very difficult, and I am sure that there will be many who really don't want it to solve this problem either. But then I think when it comes to associating an identity and then creating some kind of an authenticity to that identity, it required an entire ecosystem, right? How can we bring in, first of all, those verification of the developer themselves who are building up this agent? How can we ensure that there is a traceability of the organization who are deploying those agents? And I think collectively, we call this as chain of trust. If we are not able to establish that chain of trust, we would always have some gaps in there. And this is where, the situation, what Rish was also talking about, deepfakes. This is one of the problem statement that we started seeing, right? I think in the war zone area or sensitive area, if there is even a small image that comes out, that is misrepresented or that is being photoshopped, I think it creates a larger impact in terms of the anger that might be generated into the community, right? So how can we have traceability back to the source of whether this image has been generated by a mid-journey, or this has been generated by an individual who claim the ownership for this one, right? So not just looking at the image, but checking the source of this particular image and whether this has been contextualized and owned by an individual, maybe an editor. And that piece of information, if it is anchored on blockchain, making it immutable, that may be something that, in the coming days, the publishing agencies like Fox Media would be leveraging in order to ensure that whatever they are publishing on the website is not something that would, unnecessarily create a controversy.
Nice, interesting. Rish, over to you. The same question.
I think, in my opinion, it has to be the images or the stuff what you're talking about. This we saw during the war. Actually, the fake photos were coming out on Twitter, and people actually went crazy over it. Like, what's happening? And later, it was found that it was the deepfake stuff. There's a media company in Germany which is called Axel Springer, and they have been brainstorming along with a couple of media tech giants how to basically fight these things. And there's a lot of work actually happening. So I'm not going to touch what Ravi's already said, but I'm going to give a different perspective, what is actually happening in the industry right now. And they are kind of experimenting how to basically, because this will not happen unless there is a international standards set for the identities. If I'm doing something as a KILT, I'm developing my own identity, or Privado is developing their own identity, or some other agencies are developing their own identity, it will never work out. Imagine having different type of printers, everyone making their own printers and everyone making their own paper size. How would we even be able to print out anything in everywhere? So similar thing happens with the identity unless there's a standard not set for that, and that is how the DID standards and stuff like that. But the industry has to come into the in a single conclusion that we are going forward, we'll be using these standards to identify a digital identity, and that's how slowly we will progress towards it. Mainstream media is already a sold out media. Like we have been seeing this with the stuff, what was happening during the Trump's election and stuff like that. And we were reading something else on the mainstream media, but then on Twitter, on X, it was something else altogether. So I think going forward slowly, unless we have these big giants not adopting us, things are not going to happen, because we will have numerous AI agent marketplaces going out there. And if everyone has their own way of identifying this, it's going to be very challenging.
Perfect. Awesome. So now let's make it a little bit more interesting, the conversation. Let's flip this question. So we have blamed AI quite a bit. Now let's see how it can be helpful. So my next question is for you gentlemen, how can we use AI for identity fraud detection? Let's start with you, Ravi.
Yeah, I think good flip. This is making it to think, it's not just identity helping AI, but AI helping identity as well. Interesting one. I would say that today we are experiencing a situation where, let's say, if the video KYC has been something that has fascinated all of us, shorten up the onboarding from few days to few minutes and so on, I think this has been now challenged with the Gen AI, where we really don't know person sitting on the other side of the camera is an image, is a video, or is a real human, and that is compromising the identity onboarding itself, or rather the individual onboarding itself. Now, I would say that in this case, AI can help to defend AI. That may be a way looking forward. How can we have those kind of solutions where we can identify whether this content has some kind of a fingerprinting embedded into it to identify whether this is original or morphed. At the same time, if there is an intelligence that can not only just look at the image, but other parameter which could be more behavioral aspect in terms of some pattern that can be identified with the help of AI models again, that can help in terms of not adding anything which can be garbage, because ultimately what we might end up is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if we do not do the checkpointing at the early stage, not have the right authentication being done, it's always possible that at the later stage it might have a multiplier effect, which might create more serious problems, right? So my take on this one is, how can we have some kind of a fingerprinting mechanism when it comes to the deepfaking scene, and it leads in terms of some validation of the identity. At the same time, how can we make AI utilize better for the onboarding process so that we have right checkpoints at the entry gate and ensure that we are still authenticating the users, both human and machines, in the right way.
Perfect. I think that makes a lot of sense. Rish, over to you. The same question. How can we use AI for identity fraud detection?
It's, I think I don't believe in the fingerprint thing and stuff like that. Like I have a different ideology to it because it's technically very challenging to have a fingerprint attached to a AI agent as such, and the only way we can do is like as I said was the proof of accountability. Someone who is actually developing these AI agents should be doing the KYC for these AI agents. That's the easiest way to go forward, because someone has to develop these AI agents. Unless we reach to an era where AI agents start creating their own AI agents. And that will be probably the doomsday, to be honest, because if that starts happening. But as of today, I'm pretty sure the technology will evolve going forward, but as of today, someone is there who is actually deploying these AI agents, and they should be held responsible, or they should be held accountable for attaching certain kind of identity to these AI agents. That will surely reduce the fraud detection. Um, but unless unless something very huge change happens in next 1 year. I mean, this space is evolving so fast that it's pretty tough to catch up on that.
Awesome. All right. So we have around 5 minutes left in our session. I'll do one more questions with both of you, and then I'll invite the audience to ask one question. All right. So final one from my side. Let's talk about a little bit use cases for early adoption. So Rish, let's start with you this time.
Yeah. Are you talking to me in respect of AI only, or in general digital identity use cases?
In general, digital identity use cases, and if you are comfortable, AI as well. Like, it's your choice.
Okay, I'll keep it to the broad spectrum of digital identity for now, because I'll be talking from the perspective of KILT, what we have been doing with. Of course, the first one is the Deloitte, where Deloitte has developed the solution for their own clientele. KILT has been working with German government as well to deploy digital identities for the smart electricity meters, where you as a person can trade the energy with your own neighbor. So suppose if you're generating, at least in Europe, you have this facility of generating your own electricity using the sun, so solar power and stuff like that. And if you end up generating more energy at your own house, and if you just want to trade it with your neighbor, this can be done using digital identities. So we developed this thing as a POC project with the German Energy Agency, along with another project called Energy Web and Vodafone. So these smart electricity meters have a SIM card which has a digital identity, and that's how you can basically trade the energy. That's another thing. On the other spectrum, we are working with government of Indonesia, because the Indonesian government wants to move the entire, like how you have Aadhaar over here, entire citizen's identity on blockchain using DIDs. And this is happening with a couple of other governments as well, which I can't name right now, but there are like 4 different countries right now who are actually exploring this. I can say about US as well, because US is also exploring DIDs. So for sure there's explosion happening in terms of DID adoption or digital identity adoption in different nations. These are the first primitive use cases which I can think of right now, which is actually getting capitalized and coming into the use.
Awesome. Thank you, Rish. Ravi, use cases for early adoption. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Rish has touched on some of the, I would say, top-down use cases which are typically coming from government, whether it is for the citizen services, whether it is in terms of enabling some kind of a verification for various services that can be utilized by public sectors. I would touch a little bit in terms of what we are seeing in the Web3 space, especially on the identity front, right? So what we are seeing is, how can we bring in that huge pile of institutional money into Web3 that is still sitting outside of the fence, because there needs to be some compliance. And in absence of that compliance, we are not able to bring in that huge capital outside of Web3 into mainstream Web3, right? That is where we are more bullish, where we wanted to enable this compliance layer or a trust layer to bring in more institutional mainstream capital into the Web3 space. And that is where it would flourish both. It would bring in that compliance aspect into the TradFi, and that TradFi flow in would establish a lot of new use cases, a lot of new capital injection into Web3, and that would flourish new innovation, new startups. The second area that we are more bullish is, how can we enable this identity where we provide the experience which is more unified, right? Today, if we are seeing that at least I've got 10 plus wallets, Solana has a different wallet experience, Polkadot has a different wallet experience, go to Ethereum, go to Bitcoin, all of those chains have different set of wallet experiences, and many a times it's not that just one universal wallet where I can take it to every other chain and interact for it. That not only make the user experience suboptimal, but at the same time it also fragment my assets. And think about an experience where, let's say, I have to make a $100 payment and my assets are across 4 or 5 chains. I might have to bridge them, ensure that I'm using a right bridge, pay the fees for the bridge, and at times it takes money. Now, this is about asset. We also have the similar problem when it comes to the user reputation and user identity. And again, I'm contextualizing it from a Web3 perspective, given that most of the Web3 crowd must be here. Can we have unified identity? So that if I'm a degen in chain 1, and I have been interacting with several DeFi applications, I don't have to prove that I'm a degen if I'm applying, let's say, for a reward mechanism on chain 2, or applying for a whitelisting for an airdrop on chain 3. I should be able to carry my reputation, my digital identity from chain 1 to chain 2, chain 3, chain 4. And this is where we are working something called as unified identity. The way we have unification at the chain level, can we have the identification also at a chain level, where me as a user, if I have done my KYC on chain 1, I don't need to do the KYC again on chain 2, chain 3, but I should be able to prove that, yes, I have been done with KYC. I am now not a resident of a sanctioned country, and so I should be getting the whitelisting quickly done for an airdrop, and I don't lose that 5 minutes of my whitelisting experience again. So this is where we are seeing, but given that this is a space for AI, I would add a little more in terms of some of the AI agent use cases that we are seeing. So we are seeing that how can we bring in the agent identity or agent reputation in the scenario, which is not from an institution perspective where they have defined the workflow and they know that it's going to be agent 1, agent 2, agent 3, all 3 coming in sequence, and they really don't need an identity for that. But in the situation where it's a marketplace, and that marketplace have tens of thousands of those agents, how can we ensure that, one of the use cases that we are working at the moment is a judging agent. So there is a hackathon going on, and all the hackathon applications are judged by an agent. Now, if this agent is being judging those applications, is this agent judge has been fine-tuned in order to evaluate such kind of profiles? Is this agent qualified in order to look at the profile across various areas like DeFi, gaming, and so on? That kind of a reputation for an agent would make more sense. So these are the type of use cases that we are seeing in the early adoption of AI.
Perfect. Awesome. I think I'll just add one bit to it. I think, moreover, on a very high, broader level, it kind of boils down to the notion of proof of personhood. Like, as long as we can crack that very, like seamlessly across chains, we should be able to figure out what's a human, what's an AI, what to trust, what not to trust, and so on. And I will also shill a small thing that at Polkadot, we are actually building something for that. You should check it out, proof of personhood on Polkadot. But anyway, we are out of time now. However, because I promised you guys that I will take one question from the audience, so I will do that. We have one question here right at the front. All right.
Thank you so much, both of you. So I'll give you a small background. I come from a multi-agent automation system myself. I recently won the award for National AI for multi-agent systems as well. I disagree on some of the key points, actually, and I'll give you some examples. If you talk about accountability, I don't know how much we want to put in Web3. I'll link it to the freedom of speech, for example. If an AI agent says Indian government has not done enough for the roads and traffics in Bangalore, do you treat it as a freedom of speech, or do you treat it as a statement against the government itself? This happens a lot on the social media itself as well. And now what happens is, when you put a certain person to judge it, you're giving, again, the centralization of the authority, and my freedom is gone. One. Second, in terms of reputation, I don't know the use case if you can explain more about it. Because if you go on open source models, I feel that is one way of already doing it, Hugging Face and others. If you see, it was a small library, but now everybody pushes there. There is a community that vets it. There is a reputation. There is a score. Everything is coming there as well. And even if you see the Meta Llama 3, it has put all of the process. It is used for the guardrails as well. So I don't know what else would be a digital use case. I feel it's just a cool thing to put it on blockchain. If we don't trust Hugging Face or the community acting out there, I feel it's the reputation part I didn't get at all, actually, because there is a community vetting it anyways. In the digital identity where you're pitching a central identity does it, I feel it kills the purpose. Whereas open source community has pushed out more reputations. Anybody, if you support the government, I fund a project or someone might know, I'll push good things about it. And I don't see a breakthrough from what you're pitching, actually. I feel it's be a counterintuitive. Rather, the community should vet anyone, right? If I'm on Twitter, my identity may not be verified, but you should verify me with my content and legibility. Not, hey, if this person says something hard, I'll catch him. So these two things I would like to understand more from you both.
Can I take this? So when I say about the identity, it's not about who you are, or I'm not asking you to KYC it. You could remain anonymous. At the same point of time, you could be a verified person. Talking about the content part, what you are talking about, that some AI agent put a statement that something is there. So if you don't take accountability on that, and if something happens, I mean, having a open decentralized ethos is fine, but at the same point of time, if that particular thing starts certain kind of riot, imagine if a statement has been made and certain kind of riot breaks through that. Are you still going to feel empowered? Okay, I had the freedom of speech and I made this speech, and because of that speech, something actually got triggered. Who's going to held responsible for that? I'm talking from that perspective.
Sir, but I'm saying this is not solely in Web2 as well. Suppose in Twitter you say you're going from a car and you see a lot of potholes and you say, I don't think the government has done the work.
Yeah.
And it starts a riot among, people unnecessarily. It can start anywhere, right? I can say, hey, this is wrong. I am wrong, but I can say that and I have the support of the government. This is not solved in Web2 also. And you are asking me to put that there on the Web3 part as well. Because as you said, I mentioned immutable. I would have not said this unless you mentioned immutable. Now you're labeling me as someone of raising a voice, right? It starts a riot that, hey, you are calling our area bad, underdeveloped. I'm like that. I'm a sensitive person. You said I don't believe in fingerprint, I start a fight here. So are you wrong?
I think we have a little bit of a crunch of time, but let's facilitate this offline, okay?
It's good because he said immutable.
Go for it.
That's why I'm asking, because somebody centralizes labeled me wrong, I'm wrong for all my life.
I think I would skip the first part because this is a longer debate and I don't think it fits very well in the context of what we are trying to debate here. Happy to take that offline. But just to answer the second part in terms of the reputation. So when you say community rating, it has to work that way as well. In this case, community becomes the issuer who are issuing this kind of a reputation to a particular model. No two doubt about it. Is that how would you trust that number? Right? That is where can we do something collectively in order to make that number is trustable, right? So take an example. If you go check a restaurant rating, do you immediately believe that 4.6 out of 5 rating for that restaurant? The first question comes in, is the restaurant owner trying to beef it up? Is this 10 times cited by one individual? How do we validate that, right? So this reputation is I would say is a collective parameter that we have to think through. It's not about Web2 versus Web3. It has to be multidimensional. It has to be weighted out in a way that people can trust it. And this is where, when we were emphasizing by understanding that it has to be multidimensional, where the users of the system can talk about it, the builders of the system talks about it, the auditor talks about it, and that collective score make it more reputed, more trustworthy.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And big round of applause for your panelists here. Thank you for sharing your insights. And thank you, everyone, for your time as well. Have a good one.